Hey there YouTube, welcome to Showcase Watches. Today bringing you a video about the Rolex GMT Master, the 16750 with the Pepsi dial. This particular watch is from 1987. It is obviously the GMT Master, which as we all know was I suppose the love child between Rolex and Pan Am. 1940s, 1950s we saw a massive increase in international travel, and Pan Am being one of the top airlines in the world decided it wanted some timepiece for their pilots to keep track of different time zones as they were on the move. And this is where the GMT function came in, so that when the pilots were passing through different time zones, they could just click it by an hour, either way, whichever way they were going, and they could track the time with the GMT hand in alignment with the 24-hour bezel. Now, this particular watch, as I mentioned, is from 1987. It is a 40mm case, stainless steel. It's got the 100-meter water resistance. It's powered by the caliber 3075, and we see it here on the Jubilee bracelet, which is the original bracelet. Now, this particular model is a transitional model, going from the 1675 and then onto the 16750, which is this one that we have here. Now, this watch was released in 1979/1980, and it was in production until 1988. So a relatively short production period for the time. Rolex at the time were known to produce watches a lot longer than that, but this being a transitional, they only did it for that sort of eight-year period. Like I mentioned, it was designed for pilots, so it is an aviator's watch in conjunction with Pan Am. During the 1950s, Pan Am approached Rolex, asked them if they could make a watch that would be suitable for their pilots, and in 1959, this is what they produced. Not this particular model, but the reference 6542, the original GMT Master. If you have one of those, you're extremely lucky. To buy one of those in today's market is incredibly difficult and incredibly expensive. Now, this one, this carried on from the 1675. This particular model has the caliber 3075 movement, which beats at 28,800 beats per hour, as opposed to the 19,800 beats per hour that was in the 1675. This means, in short, that the movement was more accurate and it was more robust. It also featured the quick set for the date, which basically means that when you get to midnight, it will click over instantly onto the date. So it was a big jump forward, because having the previous model where you had to let it go to sort of 3 a.m. or whatever to click over the date was a bit of a pain, especially when you're jumping time zones. So this was a big sort of leap forward when they went on to the quick date set. This particular model also went the improvement from the 1675 on to this one, the 16750, was it went from 50 meters water resistance to 100 meter water resistance. So again, a big jump up, which meant that if you owned one of these watches, you could actually use it for going swimming, you could shower in it, you could bath in it, you could wear it as your daily watch. Not that I recommend showering and bathing in these things, because of obviously soap and things like that, but it was an option. You weren't afraid to get this watch wet, whereas 50 meters is a little bit questionable. I have a Omega Speedmaster that's rated at 50 meters. I certainly wouldn't be going in a swimming pool with it. So 100 meters is a very, very good, a respectable, for something that's not a dive watch, it's a respectable water resistance. Now, on this particular model, the 16750, there was actually two dial variants. There was the matte dial, and like on this one, it was the gloss dial. Now, the gloss dial came on the later models, and the reason why the gloss dials are a little bit special is because most gloss dials suffer with a little bit of spider legs, what they call spider legs, and this is where there's micro cracks that appear in the gloss dial. Now, if you find a 16750 with the spider legs, it is actually more desirable. Now, this, I don't think the camera can quite pick it up, but this is just starting very fractionally in areas to get the spider legs effect, which is a good thing because it tells you that it's probably the original dial on the watch. Obviously the matte dial is very, very rare. when you send these watches in for service, if it goes to Rolex, if you have a matte dial, chances are they'll send it back with a gloss dial. So to find one with a matte dial is a very, very rare thing. And to find one with an original gloss dial with the spider legs is also equally rare. On this particular model, the 16750, you'll notice that the indices actually have the white gold around them, as opposed to the previous model, which was just the stainless steel. Now in 1986, Rolex actually switched dials during the production. The first model was introduced without the date, which is, you can just see it there. So where the date is there, the first dial variant in 1986 didn't have the date, the word date there underneath the Rolex. It was just Oyster Perpetual. It didn't have the date. Then later on they switched and they actually changed it to having the date on there. Now, this is a bidirectional Pepsi aluminium bezel with the 24-hour markers, and as we can see, so we'll show again, obviously it's bidirectional, so it moves both ways, and then the idea is you line it up with the different hours. So if you're wanting to track, I don't know, if you're wanting to jump ahead 9 hours, you would just line it up with there. So I would know that Greenwich Mean Time, so here in the UK, it would be 11:30, and wherever it may be 9 hours ahead, it would be 8:30 in the morning. And that's basically, in a nutshell, how this function worked. And it's incredibly simple, but incredibly clever and very, very useful for aviation pilots travelling large distances like the 1940s, 1950s. Following the war years, that was what was becoming the norm, and the jet set of the 1960s was taking off. Now Rolex, they're not an innovation anymore. Rolex don't tend to innovate their watches. They did in the era of the GMT, the Submariner, etc. They were innovation, making the aviation watches, making the dive watches. Rolex of today is more of an iteration. They are preserving, they are making heritage watches. They are like this watch, the 16750 Pepsi Jubilee. You look at the modern version, released in 2018's Baselworld, it's basically the iteration, it's the heritage of this model. And that's what Rolex do. They know what they've done right, and they trade on that moving forward, which I fully respect. You've got a company like Omega. Omega are innovation. They are innovating all the time. Whereas Rolex know they've done the right thing. They know they've created something very special, and they will just preserve it, and they will just perfect it. Baby steps. They will just take baby steps to make the watches better. Whereas Omega will happily just go all out and bring out an entirely brand new watch, like they did with the Planet Ocean range, etc. So getting into this watch in particular, so you can see Jubilee bracelet. Now these Jubilee bracelets are known for a little bit of stretch. Now obviously this one being a 1987, there is a little bit in there, but acceptable for its age. The friction clasp with what we've got there, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We've got 7 adjustments on the clasp, which is extremely good. It makes sizing this extremely easy, especially because we have the screws for changing the bracelet length, which again, massive thumbs up for Rolex, because if you buy most other watches of this era, they're on the pins, and trying to change the bracelet on a watch with the pins is extremely difficult, whereas the screws, dead easy. You just undo the screw, pull it out, and you can remove your link and resize your watch very, very easily. So going back to the clasp, we've got the friction clasp, which by today's standard isn't fantastic, because obviously we've got the clasp, it fastens, and then we've got the clasp that fastens over the top of that, so it's like a double lock. So your watch is on your wrist and it's secure. The friction clasp is prone to just opening when it feels like it. This one is particularly good. It is plenty of friction there, but if you catch that, it will just undo, and the watch will slide off your wrist, which isn't something you want it to be doing, especially at this price point. It's an extremely comfortable watch because the Jubilee bracelet is extremely comfortable. It is without doubt the most comfortable bracelet I'm a fan of the Oyster bracelet. I love the Oyster. But the Jubilee bracelet, there is nothing in comparison for comfort. It is just absolute. You don't even know you're wearing this watch. Because it's quite a light piece, and because the bracelet is hollow end links, it is quite light, and it makes it incredibly comfortable to wear. The sizing and the proportions of this watch are near perfect. 40 millimeters, 20 mil lug width on the bracelet, which just has a nice taper to it, just makes it the perfect watch for wearing on any size of wrist. I think anybody with a small wrist, anybody with a large wrist, I think anybody can pull this watch off. I just think it's so durable and universal. It's just a superb piece. Like I said, very, very comfortable. Incredibly uncomfortable. I've got to say, that's the only word I can use, is incredibly comfortable. It has got the Hulls case, which makes changing straps extremely easy. Just push your pins in, bracelet comes out, put your pins back in, chuck a NATO strap on or whatever you want. It makes it very, very easy and fun to play with different NATO straps and play with different options. I wouldn't recommend putting this on a rubber, but it certainly goes with leather, it certainly goes with NATO. It just looks superb, and having those pins, the Hulls case, certainly makes it a lot easier, and it saves you scratching, because often when you don't have the Hulls case, you can, when you've got the no Hulls case, you have to put your little tool in there, and a lot of people do tend to scuff up inside there. Obviously, having the Hulls case, that isn't a problem. You just press it, pull it out, dead easy, and it's really, really easy to play with different straps and just have a lot of fun with this. You know, you can dress it down with a NATO, you can keep it on the Jubilee, have it a bit more dressy, but ultimately this watch will go with jeans and a t-shirt, it'll go with your shorts on the beach, it will go with a dress, it will go with a shirt cuff. It's just, it is the ultimate watch. If you were to have one watch for life, a GMT Pepsi could quite easily be it. Transitional piece, meaning, you know, it's a short run, they're very, very investable. Collectors go mad for these watches. They are very, very investable. Probably one of the most investable vintage pieces out there at the moment, with them being a transitional piece, with them being in production for a short period of time. The GMT, Pepsi, Rolex, you know, it's got everything going for it. Condition of it, everything about this watch, you know, it's all going for it. The original aluminium bezel, you can see just here, it's just starting to get a bit of aging to it, just starting to fade a little bit. The ghost dial models, if you have one of these watches with the ghost dial, which is where the red's really sort of fading off and the blue's fading, you've got a bit of spider legs on it, original dial, all that sort of thing, would just make the watch super, super collectible. And this watch is aging beautifully. I honestly think that the GMT function is the most usable and the most useful function you can have on a watch. I would use the GMT function a lot more than I would use a diver's function. With the timing bezel, I might time something once a day, but I tend to track time zones a lot more than that, because I know people who live abroad. I might be traveling abroad, or I might be, you know, it could be as simple as, you know, that there's a YouTuber who releases videos at a certain time of day, and you want to keep track of when those releases are going to come out. It can be as simple as that. It's just, it's a function that I think is more useful than a dive watch or a chronograph. And it is a watch that you can dress up, you can dress down. So this could easily be your one and only watch. And because you have got this bidirectional bezel that doesn't move in increments, you can use this as a timing bezel if you wanted. So I honestly think the GMT is the everyday one and done. You know, this could be the one and done watch. You wouldn't need to own another one apart from this if you didn't want. So yeah, I mean, tell me what you guys think. Let me know what you guys think to these watches. Do you like vintage, or do you prefer the modern? Personally, I've got both modern and vintage, and I'm edging towards the vintage. The vintage has a more authentic feel, I would say. And what I mean by that is, when you look at these vintage GMTs, it almost takes you back to what you can imagine the jet set must have felt like, what air travel felt like when you were actually treated like a human being rather than just cattle being herded onto a plane. I don't know, I love my modern Rolex, but there is a charm about the vintage that the modern Rolex just doesn't capture. And this watch, 1987, and its predecessor, the 1675, and before, they are tools. They were innovation. They were built as tools to be used by a person. You know, they were built for pilots. They were built to be used. Modern Rolex don't do that. Modern Rolex is more of a status symbol. It's more prestigious. Whereas back in the day, this watch would have been purchased as a tool. And who knows, this particular watch could have easily, you know, it could have been on Concorde for all that. You just don't know. The vintage, it tells a story, and it would be fascinating to know where this watch has been, with who, on what aircrafts. Was it used as a tool? Was it owned by a pilot? You just don't know. And to me, the vintage is better than the modern, but that is simply from a nostalgia point of view, not from a build quality. The build quality of the modern is far superior than the vintage, but the vintage just has an honesty and an authenticity about it that the modern doesn't capture. And like I said, that is just my opinion. In terms of the movement in this, I mean, the 3075, fantastic, robust movement. This thing's keeping +2 a day, so it's doing extremely well on its timekeeping. The colours, the red, the blue, it just pops. It goes with most attire, whether it be shorts, t-shirt, jeans, a suit, whatever it is. This watch will pull it off. Just absolutely superb watch. Easily a one and done. This could easily be your one and only watch. And if you don't have one, take a look. They are very, very cool watches. So thank you for watching. This is Showcase Watches. Please check out my other videos. Like and subscribe to the channel. You know, any questions, any comments, you know, good or bad, let me know your criticisms. I do have a criticism of this watch. If I had to pick fault, the crown. I would say the crown's a little bit on the small side. I would say when you look at the crown, it's maybe fractionally out of proportion. It could do to have been a little bit bigger. But, you know, this is if I'm being really, really nitpicky. This is if I had to pull this thing apart, that would be about the only thing, I think the only thing I can really fault it for. I think everything else about the watch is just perfect. And it's definitely one that's going to be with me a very long time, I think. It is. So I'll do a quick wrist shot, actually, before I wrap this up. So there you see it on the wrist. So the Rolex GMT Master 16750 from 1987. And I am Showcase Watches. Like, subscribe to the channel. Tell me what you guys think. Thanks for watching.